On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, 21 ways to crush your vacation debt.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Shawn, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Shawn, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and this week's episode is about vacation. And the whole reason behind this week's episode is that if you're listening to it on the day of release, I will probably be packing to leave for my vacation the next day. So we are taking a trip. Me, my wife, and kids, and my mom are all going to meet over at Disney World. One of the advantages of living here in Tampa Bay is that it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours away, so we can get over to Disney for a little bit of rest and relaxation. It's actually been a while since I've been on a vacation longer than probably a long weekend. So I'm really looking forward to getting away, recharging the batteries. You know, my boys are 10 and 7, and so I always love going to Disney World now, being able to see it through their eyes. And we're going to hit all the parks, the Magic Kingdom and Epcot and Disney Studios and Animal Kingdom. So we're going to hit all four of the major parks, and then we'll be back. So I'm really looking forward to it. But my thought was thinking about different ways and things that I do to plan in advance for the vacation that help me save money. I mean, Disney is not an inexpensive trip, and it's something that needs some planning. So what are some things that I do? What are some things that you can do? What are some other tips and tricks that I've researched and found so that you don't go into massive debt just to take a vacation? And so that's what I thought I'd talk about today. Now, before I get there real quick, I do want to talk again about our sponsor, Sam Cohen of Attorneys First Insurance. And so if you are an attorney or title company, or if you know the owner of a law firm or a title company, I would highly suggest that they get a hold of Sam Cohen. Sam with Attorneys First Insurance writes errors and omissions insurance, what we sometimes call malpractice insurance, solely for attorneys and title companies all over the country. Now, he's located here in Florida, and he also has a particular focus on Texas, but Sam can write malpractice insurance pretty much anywhere in the country. And one of the things that I really like about Sam is that he's honest and he's apples to apples. So if you're looking to renew your policy, he'll take a look at what you have and he'll give you an apples to apples comparison of what he can do. And if he can't beat it, then he won't quote it. If he can do better than what you've currently got, either in terms of quality of the coverage or in terms of price of the coverage or both, he'll let you know. And sometimes lower price means lower quality, so he'll let you know that as well. So if you need to contact Sam, it's sam@attorneysfirst.com or www.attorneysfirst.com. Again, a great way to support the show and a great way to support Sam is to refer him an attorney or title company who is either starting up a business and so needs malpractice coverage, or it's time for their malpractice coverage to renew. So let's get into the 21 ways here that I have to crush vacation debt. And I'll go through each one and I'll talk a little bit about each one. But the first thing that I have here is budget, and budget per day. So what's the max that you want to spend per day? You know, I say I'm going to Disney, and I have this joke that I often tell that, you know, some criminal walked away with 10 grand of merchandise from Disney, and people go, oh my gosh, what did they steal? Yeah, they stole a Diet Coke, they stole a hot dog, and they stole 2 bottles of water. So it can get expensive to go on vacation. So what's your budget for the day? You know, a lot of times when I was growing up, after I was 21 and working and single, didn't have a wife, didn't have kids, we used to go to Vegas a lot. And so I would budget, I'm only going to gamble $100 a day. And that was it. If I went up and I was gambling with house money, great. If I lost $100, I was done for the day. So what's your budget when you go on vacation? How much money do you want to spend per day? And stick to that budget and write it out and stick to that budget. And then you won't, oh my gosh, well, I wanted to get this souvenir and I wanted to get that and I wanted to buy this and I wanted to buy that. You'll discipline yourself and budget yourself not to go over, and you won't charge either unnecessarily or charge more than what you might be able to afford. My second tip here is to save money in advance. So I knew about this vacation. We planned this vacation, probably about 8-9 months ago is when we planned the vacation, made the reservations, did all that kind of stuff. Since that point, whenever I found myself with a little bit of extra money, coins that I could wrap and take to the bank, whatever, I would save it. I have a jar in my house hidden away. The wife and kids don't know where it is. And I put cash in there every time. So now, before we leave for the vacation, I'm going to go turn those into Visa gift cards or American Express or MasterCard, whatever. I'm going to turn those into gift cards. And I've got about $600 saved up. And so I'm going to turn those into gift cards. That's then going to combine with number one, and that's my budget for buying toys for the kids and buying, if they want a t-shirt or if I want a hat or, whatever. That's going to be my budget for buying that kind of stuff. And I've been saving up that money, 8-9 months, just a little cash reserve in a jar that I'm going to turn into gift cards. And that's what I'm going to spend at Disney. Now, why gift cards? A lot of times, in years past, I would just bring cash with me. But today, in COVID, there are some places that don't accept cash. So I turn them into gift cards, into like Visa gift cards, and then I use those. I spend those when I'm on vacation. But now I know, combined with my budget, I know exactly what I can spend on souvenirs, or if I want to get a drink, or whatever it is that I'm going to do. The next tip here is to bring food and drinks with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going actually to Costco on the morning that we leave. We're not leaving till the afternoon. So I'm going to go to Costco. I'm going to go to the bulk warehouse. Combined, I've talked about buying in bulk before as well. I'm going to go to the bulk warehouse and I'm going to buy one of those 40 packs of water bottles and bring that with me. And when we get into the room, I'm going to put enough water in the room to get cold and continue to refill and restock that water. That way we're not having to drink we're not having to pay for the hotel's bottles of water. We're not having to go to vending machines, and we can have those water bottles with us. Now, I've heard other tips where you bring a refillable water bottle, and that may also be a good idea. That way, the idea here is you're not buying bottles of water, because you can probably buy a bottle of water from a vending machine for $2 or $3, especially at Disney, where if I get them from Costco, I get 40 for like $3. So you can buy your water in advance. The other thing I'm going to buy in advance are snacks. So again, managing my blood sugar, managing my diabetes, there's certain snacks that I can have and certain snacks that I still want to avoid even while I'm on vacation. Now, I may treat myself to a dessert here or there, but I want to avoid certain stuff. I want to avoid the temptation of just shoving something in my mouth because I feel my blood sugar dropping. So I'm going to go and I'm going to buy popcorn, and I'm going to buy pistachios and almonds, and I'm going to buy goldfish, or very low carb for me, don't impact my blood sugar a lot. And so I'm going to buy a lot of that stuff. I may buy protein bars for the kids, or granola bars for the kids, or whatever, and have that stuff with us in the room. Pack a little bit of that stuff every day before we head out to the parks, and that way I'm covered on snacks, and I'm not having to buy something in the park that may be more expensive than what I want to spend to force myself to have a snack that may be more sugar than I want, or may be more carbs than I want. I'm not forcing myself to eat poorly just because I'm on vacation. Along those same lines, the next tip here is to get a room with a kitchen if you can. And part of the reason there is because you can skip going out for a meal and make the meal in your room if you have a working kitchen in the room. So you can save money by going grocery shopping before you get to your room and getting the supplies that you need. And even if you don't have a kitchen, maybe it's something like, making sandwiches, or maybe it's something like making toast for breakfast, or maybe it's something like making cereal for breakfast, or something like that. If you can get a room with a kitchen and go grocery shopping ahead of time, then you can avoid a lot of the costs of eating out for breakfast or for lunch. Dinners, I don't know. I enjoy eating dinners out. Dinners are kind of fun. Although I think one of my other tips here is a comparison of lunch and dinner. One of my comparisons here is lunch and dinner, one of my tips. So I don't know that I would really want to make dinner in the room, but it may be a way to save money, and I'll get to that here in a few minutes. My next tip here is plan in advance. And that sort of goes along with what I just discussed. Plan in advance. So again, where am I going to be? What parks am I going to be in or at? What am I going to snack on? What am I going to eat? especially going to Disney World, you've got to plan pretty much all your meals. You got to make reservations, I think, at least 6 months in advance for lunches and dinners and breakfasts and all that kind of stuff. So plan in advance, and that way you're not having to, number one, eat unhealthy because you don't know what you're going to do to eat for a particular meal. But number two, like I said, you got your snacks. You got, if you wanted to make and bring sandwiches, you've got those kinds of things where you've planned on what it is that you're going to eat. And so that will help you save some money as well. My next tip here is to look for specials. Look at Groupon and other similar sites that have specials. One of the things here that we typically do on an annual basis, I talked about long weekends. We typically take a long weekend once a year, and me and my wife and boys go to Legoland. And we're doing that again this year in May, I think. We're taking the boys over to Legoland for a long weekend. They're still at the age where they love Legos. Frankly, I'm still at the age where I love Legos. So we take the boys to Legoland every year. Now, every year, Legoland has a special that they run on the Friday after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. They run a Thanksgiving special. And so we were able to get 2 nights at the Legoland Hotel and 2 days at the Legoland Park for the 4 of us for about $700. It's a fantastic special. It is half the price of what it would be otherwise. And you don't have to use the tickets when you buy them. You can book like we did. We bought the tickets in November of 2021, and we booked the vacation for May of 2022. So look for those types of things. Look for places that run specials like that. Look on Groupon. Look on other sites like that that can give you discounts and specials. And again, we cut the price of that Legoland vacation nearly in half. And I'm going to do the same thing when we go to Legoland that I'm doing when we go this weekend to Disney. Buy the water in advance. Buy the popcorn and the goldfish and the snacks and the sandwiches and all the different tips. As soon as we get back from Disney, I'm going to start saving up money. I've got the rest of February, March, April, and about half of May to save up money to then buy gift cards to go over to Legoland. So I'm going to do the same thing over and over and over again. But my tip here is to look for specials. Number 8, purchase far in advance. Like I said, we booked this Disney vacation probably about 8-9 months ago, and we booked the reservations about 6 months ago. Now, booking the reservations in advance doesn't change the cost of the food. The cost of the food is going to be the cost of the food for the reservations. But booking in advance, we get better hotel rates. If you're trying to take a flight somewhere, you get better flight rates. If you need to rent a car, all those different things, the farther in advance that you book, the cheaper those things are going to be. So the further in advance that you can plan your vacation, you'll probably find specials or deals or different ways that you can cut the cost and the price of some of the stuff you're going to do. My next tip here is to travel or vacation in the off season. So, yeah, we are going to have to pull our kids out of a few days of school here, but that's the good news. We're not going in March where we're running into spring break. We're not going in December or January where we're running into Christmas and New Year's. We're not going in May where we're running into summer break or June. I remember going to Disney once on the 4th of July. It was a madhouse to go on the 4th of July. So travel during the off season, again, for airfare, you'll get cheaper rates if you travel in the off season. The parks will not be as full if you go to the parks during the off season. You're not going during vacation times. I remember growing up, we grew up in Miami, and again, we went to Disney a lot. I love going to Disney. And we always went in October. It was, school had sort of just started, so there wasn't a huge rush to get to the parks. There really was no holiday nearby. We went prior to, they were probably setting up for Halloween. Actually, when I was growing up, the holidays occurred on the holidays. So maybe Disney was setting up for Halloween. Maybe they weren't, even though we were there in October. But travel during the off season. My next tip here is use reward points. Now, for those of you that do have credit cards, and for those of you that are able to spend and then pay off your credit cards, find a card with rewards points and then use those points. Something that my parents do. My parents have a Disney credit card. So it's a Visa card, but it's tied to their Disney reward points. And so by spending on that card, they get different discounts and different points to spend while they're at Disney. And so my parents have tied their rewards points cards to their Disney vacations. And one of the other tips here that I didn't really write down, maybe 21 and a half, tip 21 and a half, or bonus tip here is my parents are a member of the Disney Vacation Club. It's a timeshare arrangement. And so they get cheaper hotels from being that way. They get some other perks from being the Vacation Club members. So they have that Disney card because they do go to Disney a lot. We only go maybe once every couple of years, and typically when we can go with them because we're staying with them at their timeshare, which is on property, which is on Disney property, but we're staying with them at their timeshare, so actually we're not paying for the hotel. So that made the vacation a lot cheaper by not paying for the hotel and using their Rewards Club points and then their Visa points to pay for the hotel and some of the souvenirs and some of the tickets and some of the other stuff. So again, sort of a bonus point that I didn't write here, but use rewards points. Use rewards points when you can, especially if you have a rewards card that gets you airfare or hotels or rental cars or those kinds of things. Use those rewards points for your vacation. That'll save you some money. Look for airline, hotel, and car rental packages. So if you're not going to Disney, or if you live outside the state of Florida and you got to fly in to come to Disney, look for, a lot of the airlines and hotels will have the airline, hotel, and car rental packages. And so look for those. Those will typically save you a few dollars as you're booking and planning your vacation. My next tip here, most hotels, or find a hotel that offers a free breakfast, a free continental breakfast. And so this is sort of combined with one of my earlier points. If you find a hotel that offers a free continental breakfast, now, yeah, the cost of that breakfast is baked into the cost of the room. I get it. But if you find a hotel that offers free breakfast, not only do you not have to pay for that meal, although, I get it, it's baked into the room, the monthly night of the hotel rental. I get it. But you're not going to have to spend extra money paying for breakfast, number one. Number two, all of those free continental breakfasts have individually wrapped apples, bananas, muffins, all different kinds of things that you can take and not necessarily eat at breakfast. And those kinds of things can be snacks for later. So while you're walking around the park, instead of buying some kind of bad for you, greasy, sugary, something or other snack, you can have an apple. Or the next morning for breakfast, instead of trying to figure out what you're going to have for breakfast, you can have a muffin that you took from the day before. So, use the free continental breakfast. Don't, load up a book bag full of garbage from the continental breakfast. But if you take an apple here, you take a muffin there, and then you can save those and eat those later, either later in the day or the next day or whatever. So find a hotel that has the free continental breakfast and take advantage there. My next tip here. Now, I mentioned part of the gift cards that I'm going to buy is, I am going to have a few drinks here while I'm on vacation. I plan for it. My sugar plans for it. And so I'll be okay. But one of the things here I put was to skip the bar and the drinks. Now, one thing that I used to do in addition to buying the water bottles and buying the snacks and buying all that stuff is I'd buy a case of beer, and I'd have the case of beer in the room with me. And I may or may not buy a six-pack. I haven't quite decided yet. Beer spikes my sugar where vodka and bourbon and rum don't. So I may just have those types of drinks instead of beer. But skip the bar. Typically when you're on vacation, typically when you're at a hotel, the drinks are going to be a lot more than what you could get just by buying a bottle of whatever it is, buying a beer, buying a bottle of whatever it is you want to drink. So I wouldn't spend time. Now, again, if you are a drinker, if you are a responsible drinker, if you enjoy drinking, I'm not telling you not to drink. What I'm telling you is not to get hammered every night. In addition to just being bad for your health, you're going to spend a ton of money drinking. So again, that's something you can plan for. And if it happens to be where you skip the bar one night, especially me being here on vacation with my wife and kids and mom, if I happen to skip the bar one night, if I happen to skip a drink one night, I'm still going to have a great time on vacation. And I'm going to save a lot of money because I'm not going to worry about where is that next alcohol drink coming from. My next tip here, I think we're on number, 13 or 14. check for auto tip. Now, this is something that I do regularly at restaurants as well. We tend to go out with friends, and so it'll be me and my wife and kids, and it'll be, friends of ours, husband and wife and their kids. And so sometimes if we had a third husband and wife and their kids, there could be 8 to 12 people at the table. And a lot of restaurants will auto add a tip if your party is above a certain size. And so that's something that I check for just when we go out regularly, but especially when we're out on vacation. Check to see that the places you're staying don't automatically add a tip. Now, whatever your tipping strategy is, I've got a friend of mine who doesn't tip more than $1 or $2 regardless. I've got friends that tip 20%, 25%. I've got friends that still tip 15%, 18%. This is not a podcast episode. This is about how you tip. How you tip is how you tip. I'm not going to talk about that or criticize. But check for an auto tip. And so if they auto tip at 20% and you're an 18% tipper, you don't have to tip any more than that. And actually, you could probably even have them take the 20% off in favor of putting the 18% on. But let's say the other way. Let's say they auto tip 18% and you're normally a 20% tipper. Well, if you then tip 20%, you've given that waiter, waitress, waitstaff a huge tip. So you would only want to tip that extra 2% if you see the auto tip on your bill. Now, again, how you tip is how you tip. I'm not here to talk about that or criticize that at all. So, if you're on vacation and you're having a good time and it's within your budget and you want to give your wait staff a little bit of extra because they did a fantastic job, go for it. I'm not saying don't tip at all. What I'm saying is watch for the auto tip if that's part of your budget. My next tip here is buy travel insurance, especially in this day of COVID. Buy travel insurance. I mean, we are... my wife and I are vaccinated. We both had our boosters. Our kids have both been vaccinated. But still, we're being very careful this week and last week to try to avoid situations where we may be exposed to COVID, because that'll cancel our vacation. We won't be able to go if we're positive for COVID here in the next couple of days. And so if that happens and you don't have travel insurance, you lose the cost of the reservation. You lose possibly some of the restaurant reservations that you can't cancel in time. So definitely buy travel insurance, especially if you're doing something like a flight or a cruise or something like that. Definitely spend the money to buy the travel insurance just to give you that peace of mind that if something happens, maybe it's not COVID, maybe you just get sick, or maybe the place where you're going, there's some kind of conflict, or, who knows what could happen that could cancel your vacation. A family member passes away and you can't go because you're grieving. I mean, who knows what could happen that could get a vacation canceled, but buy the travel insurance. My next tip here is to notify the bank in advance. So if you're you should be bringing a credit card with you just to account for some of those expenses that may or may not come up, or maybe it's within your budget. But notify the bank in advance. A lot of banks may see, wait a minute, Shawn lives in the Tampa Bay area, but now we've got all these miscellaneous charges coming in Orlando, and they may put a block on the card. Or if I fly to a foreign country, or if I fly to someplace outside of Florida, and the bank sees all these charges coming from this area other than the Tampa Bay area, they may put a block on the card. Now, that's not really hard to get rid of. You call the bank, and most banks, especially cards, have 24/7 customer support. And so you call the bank and you ask them to remove the block, and that's, it should be okay. But do you really want to deal with that kind of nonsense? Do you really want to deal with that kind of a pain in the rear end? So notify the bank in advance that you're traveling. That'll stop you. That'll stop them potentially from putting fraud blocks when they see charges coming from a strange place that you're not normally in, and that'll help save you some time and potentially save you some money by not having to divert to other sources to pay for stuff that you want to pay for because there's a block on your card. My next tip here: stay with family and friends. Now, this is something that I do when I go to Tallahassee. And so a lot of you may know, longtime listeners may know, I'm an FSU graduate, Florida State University graduate, alumni. My mom and dad now live in Tallahassee. When my dad retired, they moved out to Tallahassee. My sister followed me to FSU My brother-in-law grew up in Tallahassee, so she met him up there. They got married. My sister and brother-in-law and niece now live in Tallahassee. My brother-in-law's family, who are all fantastic people, live in Tallahassee. I've still got friends from college that live in Tallahassee. My mom and dad live in Tallahassee. I go to football games in Tallahassee. Now, those of you that are not FSU fans, give me a break. Football season is over. We're getting ready here for the Super Bowl, so the college football season is over, and hope springs eternal for all colleges this time of year. We're getting to National Signing Day. But when I go to Tallahassee, I stay with my sister. Now, if I go with my wife and kids, there's not really enough room for all four of us to stay with my mom and dad or with my sister or with friends. So at that point, we'll get a hotel. But if it's just me popping in for a weekend game, or me and one of my boys popping in for a weekend game, we can stay with my mom and dad. We can stay with my sister. I've got friends out there potentially that we could stay with. So, that'll save on the cost of a hotel, especially on game weekends. I know that I took my wife and kids with a friend of mine and his wife and kids, and we went up for the Notre Dame game this past season over Memorial Day weekend, or Labor Day weekend, over Labor Day weekend. And it was about $1,000 trip just in hotel reservations. So, staying with family will help eliminate that cost of the hotel. And again, we did the same thing. We brought water bottles, and we brought snacks, and we brought food, and we ate at the continental breakfast, and did all those same tips, saved up money in advance, did all those same tips. But, staying with family or friends, if you can, is a great way to reduce the costs, especially eliminate the hotel costs. This next tip I wrote down here is drive versus fly. Now, if we can drive somewhere, and for me, that's anywhere probably within 4 to 6 hours. If we can drive somewhere, we do, versus flying. I remember we took a trip to South Carolina, maybe about 7 years ago, for my wife's cousin's wedding. And so we drove from here to Atlanta, which was about a 6-hour drive. And then we drove from Atlanta to South Carolina, which again was about a 6-hour drive. Now, could we have flown? Absolutely. But it was a little bit of a road trip for us. We visited friends and family in Atlanta, and then we, went to South Carolina. Part of the other reason we drove is that my wife was pregnant with our second at the time, and so we didn't necessarily want to fly. But still, the cost of driving is really just gas and maintenance on the car versus the cost of airfare for, at the time, 3 people. We saved a lot of money by driving. Now, when we went to Hawaii on our honeymoon, obviously we flew. I think we went to Indiana at one point to go see Indianapolis, where my wife is from, we flew. If it's going to be more than about 4, 5, 6 hours, I would much rather fly than spend the time in the car. But if it's close enough that we can drive, you're going to save money by driving versus buying a plane ticket. I remember last year we went to the Keys, and we vacationed in the Keys. And again, a lot of these same tips. I stayed with a buddy of mine, so we didn't have to use the hotel. We went to the grocery store because we stayed at his house with a kitchen. So the 3-4 days we were there, we maybe went out to eat 2 or 3 times total, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We cooked at the house. We barbecued. We did all that kind of stuff. I saved up money in advance and brought gift cards with me and cash and all that kind of stuff. So, we use these tips every time we go on vacation, and it saves us a lot of money. But what I would suggest is if it's a distance that you're comfortable driving, then drive it versus flying. And part of the reason I picked that 4 to 6 hours is that's pretty much what you're going to spend in terms of time by flying somewhere. Now, I get it. You're not going to have to drive the car, but you're still going to have to spend the time. I mean, if my flight, let's say my flight is at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, I've got to be at the airport by what? 6:30, and then the flight is at 8, and let's say it's a 2-hour flight that gets done, that you land at 10, and then to get your bags and your rental car and get to the hotel that you're staying at, it's probably 11 o'clock. So here we left our house at 6 o'clock, we pulled into the hotel at 11 o'clock. If that hotel is less than 5 hours away driving, we'll get there by 11 o'clock anyway, with some exception for traffic and accidents and that kind of stuff. But still, if the location is within 4, 5, 6 miles, you're probably going to spend that amount of time trying to fly there anyway. Now, especially this weekend when we're going to Disney, drive the car to Disney, park the car, and then once you're at Disney, everything's self-contained. So buses and the monorail and the ferries and all that kind of stuff. So But yeah, we're gonna drive to Disney. It's only an hour and a half, 2 hours away. We're gonna drive to Legoland. It's only an hour and a half away. So yeah, if you can, I would definitely suggest that you would save money if you can drive there versus fly there. And the length of the drive, totally up to you. If you're not comfortable driving for long distances and it's easier for you to fly, go for it. But I think you'll save money by driving versus flying. My next point here is lunch versus dinner. And I alluded to this earlier in the episode, but lunch versus dinner in terms of which meal, if you had to eat one of these two meals out, which one would you want to eat out? And I would suggest scheduling a couple of lunches and making dinner, and scheduling a couple of dinners and making lunch, because what you'll typically find is that restaurants charge more for dinner than they do for lunch. And so if you're out on vacation and you schedule every dinner as a hotel, as a reservation at a restaurant, you're going to spend a lot more money than if you schedule one or two or three or however many of those as a lunch. Lunch is going to be cheaper. And so if you can afford to do it. So now one of the things we have planned, we want to go see the fireworks at the different parks. So on those 2 days that we want to see the fireworks at the parks, what we're going to do is have a lunch reservation and have lunch at one of the restaurants at the parks. And then we're going to find something for dinner, whether it's a little bit of a cheaper non-reservation type dinner or a dinner that we make in the room or whatever. So we'll have lunch, we'll come back to the room, we'll relax, we'll have dinner, and then we'll head back out to the park for the fireworks. And that way we'll save some money because typically dinner restaurants are more expensive than lunch restaurants. So the food for dinner is typically more expensive than the food for lunch. So if you can schedule a handful of reservations where you're having lunch instead of dinner, and then you have other plans for dinner, you may save a little bit of money that way. Tip number 20 here, I think. I've got 2 tips left, I believe. So tip number 20 here is make a list of what you need to pack. And so I always do that. And so for me, it's, underpants, literally underpants, the different kinds. So whether it's boxers versus I have like running sometimes that I wear that keeps me a little bit more comfortable to wear like the running gear instead of like boxers while I'm walking around the hot park, something like that. Socks, make sure you pack socks. Make sure you pack shirts, shorts, jeans. Do you need something that's going to be a little bit more formal for one night? Do you want to pack polo shirts? Do you want to pack Oxford type button-down shirts? Women, do you want to pack blouses? Do you want to pack dresses? What kinds of things do you want to pack? One thing we're dealing with here with this vacation to Disney is the forecast calls for 1 or 2 days of rain. So we've got to pack some rain gear. We've also got to pack, the night times are going to be in the 50s or 60s. Now, yeah, I get it. Those of you in the north are laughing. 50s and 60s is still shorts weather. But for those of us here in Florida, 50s and 60s is kind of cold. So, do we want to pack jeans versus if we were going, in April, maybe we might want to pack only shorts because it would be too hot for jeans. So do you want jeans? Do you want pants? Do you want shorts? Do you want shoes, dress socks? Athletic socks, bathing suits. We're probably not going to pack bathing suits. Number one, I don't know that we budgeted any time to swim, but number two, it's going to be a little bit too cold to go swimming unless our pool at the hotel is heated. So, what kinds of things do you want to pack? But aside from that, what about toothbrush, toothpaste? What about shampoo? What about conditioner, soap, medicines that you need? What other kinds of things do you want to pack? Chargers for the car. I have a couple of those battery backups for my cell phones, and I need to make sure I pack those. Bags, laundry bags to put the dirty laundry in. What kinds of things do you need? And the whole point of this tip, the way that this tip saves you money, is you avoid the "I'll buy it when I get there" trap. And the reason is, I used to joke with my wife, I forgot toothpaste. Well, I think where we're going has toothpaste. And they may. But what's the cost of a small tube of hotel toothpaste versus buying it at the grocery store and bringing it with you? So by avoiding the "I'll buy it when I get there," gosh, what happens if you forget a prescription and now you've got to find a pharmacy and you've got to get a hold of the doctor that'll fill a prescription, and now you've got to buy the prescription earlier than maybe what you had planned. And if you don't have the right prescription plan, or if it's an expensive prescription, or if you haven't hit your prescription deductible yet, how much money are you going to spend? What are you going to do to your budget just to buy a prescription that you forgot? Well, what if you forgot, and most hotels have a hair dryer, but what if you forgot your hair dryer, your brush, your comb, your toothbrush? How much are you going to spend? What if you forgot a bathing suit and you need to buy a bathing suit? The bathing suit at the hotels are going to be a lot more expensive than a bathing suit at the mall, or a bathing suit at Target, or even Walmart. So avoid the "I'll buy it when I get there" trap by making sure you create a list and you pack pursuant to that list. Now, you may forget something, and if you do, they have that kind of stuff there. But by making a list, you'll avoid the trap of "I'll buy it when I get there." And here's another little tip of mine personally. My list really doesn't change. So I've got my vacation packing list. Now, the only thing that might change is, hey, it's going to rain, so bring rain gear. Or, hey, I've updated this prescription since the last time I went on vacation, so take this one instead of that one. But for the most part, my vacation list, my packing list is on my iPad ready to go. All I got to do is call it up and go right down the list, make sure I pack, and I'm done. What books do you want to bring with you to read? Do you want to make sure you bring your iPad? I probably will bring my iPad. I probably will not do very much work. One of the things on my list actually is to turn on my vacation responder and my voicemail responder at the office to let people know that I'm going to be out for a few days. So, what kinds of things are on your list? What kinds of things can you think about to avoid the "I'll buy it when I get there" trap? My last tip here, have fun. Now, this really isn't a tip about saving money. It's really not a tip about avoiding getting into too much debt when you're on vacation. It's more of a mindset tip. Remember, you're on vacation to have fun. You're on vacation for rest and relaxation. You're on vacation to recharge. Enjoy it. Have fun. If you happen to spend a little bit more money than you had planned, it's not the end of the world. If you did forget something on your list, it's not the end of the world. If you did forget to bring water, or you run out of water while you're there, water bottles while you're there, or you run out of snacks while you're there, it's not the end of the world. So go ahead and have fun and enjoy and come back recharged. Because one of the other things here is, even if you happen to spend a few more dollars than you had planned, when you get back rested and recharged, you can then dive back into the work that you have to do and make more money to compensate. You'll be in a better place mentally, you'll be more focused, you'll be more relaxed, you'll have fun while you're on vacation, you'll create memories with your family. So, not really a money-saving tip, but more of a mindset tip. You're on vacation to have fun. Enjoy the ride. I think that'll do it for this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. Again, for those of you listening on the day of release, as you're listening to this, I am probably already in what I call vacation mode. We'll be packing probably the nighttime after this week's episode comes out. We'll be leaving the following day for Disney. I will have to record a handful of episodes on the Friday before we leave so that I'm not rushing to get an episode posted right when I get back. But that'll do it for this week's episode. What are some of your tips? Are there any tips that you have for saving money on vacation that I may have forgotten? Shoot me an email. Let me know. Let me know what some of the things are that you do to save money while you're on vacation. But I guess that'll do it. I look forward to coming back relaxed, recharged. We'll see maybe what kinds of topics I can think of while I'm on vacation to talk about for you all here. Maybe there are some things that I forgot. But that'll do it for this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. I hope that these tips help you have more money at the end of the month rather than more month at the end of the money. And I will talk to you in next week's episode.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Shawn or connect with us on social media. Shawn Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.